You can feel it, can't you? That quiet tension between the life you want and the life you keep repeating. A lot of people think abundance begins when money finally arrives, when the right opportunity shows up, or when life stops feeling so uncertain. But abundance doesn't begin out there. It begins much earlier, much deeper. It begins in consciousness. Long before anything changes in your outer world, something has to change in your inner atmosphere. A person can have very little and still carry the emotional posture of overflow. Another can have plenty and still live in fear, still think like loss is around the corner, still grip life with the energy of someone waiting for the floor to collapse. That's why abundance isn't just a result, it's a frequency. And your life, whether you notice it or not, keeps arranging itself around the signal you send. Every thought you rehearse becomes part of that signal. Not just the loud thoughts either, not only the dramatic ones, even the quiet inner comments matter. The passing assumptions, the reflexive doubts, the words you repeat so often they no longer sound like thoughts, only facts. Nothing works for me. I'm behind. Other people get the chances. Maybe I'm asking for too much. Those sentences may seem harmless, almost ordinary, but they shape your field the way drops of water shape stone, slowly, repeatedly, until your whole identity begins to bend around them. Then life mirrors them back. Not because the world is cruel, but because consciousness is formative. A seed doesn't argue with the soil. It grows according to what surrounds it. In much the same way, your reality keeps taking instruction from the emotional and mental environment you create within yourself. Maybe that's the part nobody taught you clearly enough. You are always broadcasting. Before you speak, something in you has already spoken. Before you walk into a room, your energy has already introduced you. Before you ask for the opportunity, present the idea, launch the offer, or make the move, your inner state has already helped shape the response. So when abundance feels distant, the first question isn't, how do I get more? It's what am I being? Because you don't become magnetic by chasing harder. You become magnetic by becoming coherent, by thinking, feeling, speaking, and moving in a way that no longer contradicts what you say you desire. A divided signal repels, a clear signal draws, and once you start seeing abundance as alignment instead of acquisition, everything begins to shift, gently at first, then all at once. Most people are trying to change their lives while still carrying the emotional signature of lack. That's where the friction comes from. On the surface, they say they want more money, more peace, more freedom, more success. Underneath, though, their nervous system is still bracing for disappointment. Their body still expects loss. Their self-talk still drips with apology, guilt, comparison, and quiet shame. So even when opportunity comes near, something inside them tightens. They hesitate, they shrink, they second-guess. Then they call it bad luck, when really it was misalignment. Your aura, call it your field, your signal, your energetic atmosphere, cannot lie. It reflects what you have practiced emotionally, not what you post, not what you claim, not what you wish were true, what you have actually rehearsed in thought and feeling over and over until it became your normal. And that's why abundance has to be felt, not just understood. You can't think your way into overflow while your body still treats expansion like danger. Plenty of people can imagine success for 10 seconds. Fewer can feel safe inside it. Fewer can hold the emotional weight of being seen, receiving more, being responsible for more, standing in their value without rushing to minimize it. Strange thing is, a person can spend years asking for abundance while unconsciously rejecting the very sensations that come with it. Visibility feels risky. Higher standards feel lonely. More money feels loaded with guilt. Power feels unsafe. So the old identity stays in control, and the person keeps circling the same results. Not because they're incapable, not because life forgot them, because the body still associates abundance with threat. Until safety and expansion become friends, self-sabotage keeps wearing different masks. Here's where the real work starts. You begin training your inner field the way someone trains a muscle, deliberately, patiently, and with repetition. Gratitude helps, yes, but not as a performance. Gratitude is useful because it interrupts the trance of insufficiency. Clear self-respect helps too, especially when it shows up in ordinary moments. How you speak about your work, how you hold eye contact, how you stop apologizing for your needs, how you stop shrinking your gifts to keep other people comfortable. Environment matters more than most people admit. If you're surrounded by constant complaint, emotional chaos, gossip and fear, your signal gets contaminated. Spend enough time in a room full of smoke, and eventually you smell like it. Same thing happens with energy. What you consume, you begin to broadcast. So your field has to be protected, fed well, guarded, not out of arrogance, but out of responsibility. Some older wisdom traditions used to say that a person becomes what they behold. There's a reason that idea survived. Attention is creative, focus is formative. Whatever you return to, again and again, begins to shape your internal climate. So if your attention stays fixed on what's missing, you train your system to live in absence. If your attention learns to rest on possibility, worth, vision, and contribution, your whole field starts organizing around abundance instead. No, that doesn't mean pretending problems don't exist. It means refusing to build your identity around them. A storm can pass through the sky without becoming the sky. In the same way, fear can move through you without becoming your home. Once you understand that, a deeper realization begins to emerge. Abundance isn't only about receiving more. It's about becoming someone who no longer betrays what they are asking for. And from there, a much more powerful question rises. How do you actually become that person in a real, grounded, daily way? First, you reclaim authorship over your identity, not in a dramatic, performative way, more like returning to a house that should have always belonged to you. A lot of what you've called yourself was taught into you by fear. Maybe it came from people who meant well but lived in scarcity. Maybe it came from systems that praised struggle and treated power like danger. Maybe it settled into you so early you never questioned it. Beliefs about worth, beliefs about money, beliefs about what kind of life you're allowed to have, beliefs about whether success changes people, corrupts people, distances people. Those impressions don't just sit in the mind like old files in storage. They color your decisions. They influence your posture. They shape your tolerance for good things. So becoming the frequency of abundance means telling the truth at last. You were not born thinking small. You were trained to. And what was trained can be retrained. A practical way to begin is through daily emotional calibration. Before the world gets loud, sit with yourself for a few minutes and take inventory. Ask honestly, what am I feeling right now? And is this feeling leading me toward the life I say I want? Not every emotion needs to be feared, but every emotion should be noticed. Unexamined feelings often end up driving the whole day. Once you notice the state, you interrupt what doesn't serve. Then you replace it, not with hollow positivity, but with directed truth. Speak to your nervous system as if it can learn, and it can. Tell your body that success is safe. Tell your mind that abundance is not foreign. Tell your heart that expansion does not require self-betrayal. Visualize your future self from the inside, not as a spectator admiring some distant version of you, but as someone looking through their eyes, standing in their posture, breathing with their calm. Familiarity changes everything. When your system starts recognizing abundance as home instead of threat, resistance begins to loosen its grip. Another powerful practice is what could be called energetic pre-play. Before an important conversation, a new opportunity, a decision that matters, pause. Close your eyes. Breathe. Imagine it has already gone well, better than expected in fact. Feel the relief. Feel the steadiness. Feel the quiet certainty of someone who no longer needs to force outcomes. Then notice who you became in that imagined moment. How did you sit? How did you speak? What had disappeared from your energy? Desperation, over-explaining, the urge to impress. Carry that version of yourself into the real moment. A surprising amount of fear comes from emotionally rehearsing failure before anything has even happened. Pre-play reverses that habit. It gives your body a new script. and when the body stops acting like a threat is near, your presence changes. People feel that change. Doors often respond to that change, not because you manipulated anything, but because your field stopped arguing with your desire. Then something beautiful starts happening. Abundance stops feeling like a fantasy you visit and starts feeling like a standard you live from. You become less needy, less frantic, less willing to trade your peace for approval. Certainty grows, calm grows, congruence grows, contribution grows too, because real abundance is never just about taking more. It's about becoming more valuable, more grounded, more capable of carrying something meaningful into the world. People trust that energy. Opportunities trust that energy. Success tends to move toward people who feel ready to hold it without collapsing under it. So the real transformation isn't only in what arrives, it's in what no longer has to be chased. Your presence begins doing part of the work your anxiety used to do badly. Your field becomes cleaner, stronger, more coherent. And once that coherence is in place, the old version of you, the one who begged, doubted, minimized and waited for permission, starts to feel strangely unfamiliar. That's when you know the frequency is changing. Not when life is perfect, but when your identity is no longer loyal to limitation. Eventually, becoming the frequency of abundance stops feeling like a practice you're trying to remember and starts feeling like the most honest way to live. You stop asking whether you're allowed to want more. You stop treating your desires like crimes that need defending. You stop performing humility by making yourself smaller than you are. A river doesn't apologize for flowing. A tree doesn't negotiate with the sky before it grows. Nature expands without shame, and there's something worth learning there. So much suffering comes from resisting your own increase, from acting as if a fuller life must be earned through exhaustion, guilt, or endless proof. Yet abundance responds to readiness, not self-punishment. It moves toward people who can hold it with steadiness, people who have made peace with being visible, people who no longer confuse shrinking with goodness. Still, none of this means ease all the time. In fact, some of the deepest strengthening happens when life still looks uncertain and you choose alignment anyway. When the bank account says one thing and your energy says another, when fear shakes in your chest and you move with integrity anyway, when results are delayed and you refuse to let delay become identity, that's where aura is forged, not in comfort, but in congruence under pressure. Fire can destroy, yes, but guided fire hardens steel. In the same way, challenge can either scatter your energy or refine it, depending on whether you meet it with panic or with grounded conviction. A strong field is not built because life is always kind. It's built because you stop letting difficult moments define your signal. And maybe that's the missing piece for so many people. They think abundance belongs to a future version of them, someone more polished, more healed, more accomplished, more certain. But abundance begins the moment you stop postponing your own embodiment. Right here, in how you answer an email, in how you walk into a room, in whether your morning begins with chaos or intention, in whether your mind remains a hallway where fear runs wild, or becomes a temple where only what strengthens you is allowed to stay. Small choices are never small for long. Repeated daily, they become identity. Identity becomes signal. Signal becomes results. Then one day, what used to feel impossible starts feeling inevitable, and you realize the outer changes were only catching up to a decision you made within. So if you've been waiting for a sign, maybe this is the sign, not a dramatic one, not lightning across the sky, something quieter and probably more useful, a remembering, a return, a recognition that the life you want is not asking you to become someone fake, louder, or more glamorous than you are. It's asking you to become internally honest, to stop sending mixed messages, to stop saying abundance with your mouth while broadcasting unworthiness with your body, to stop calling fear wisdom and calling hesitation humility. Your future doesn't need a better performance from you. It needs greater coherence. Once that clicks, you stop chasing abundance like it lives somewhere else. You begin meeting it as your own reflection.